Hello there, and welcome to my first live stream. I've just watched Valley Brook on the YouTube Facebook group. He's just finished. Thank you. That was enjoyable to watch. And so I don't know how many people I've got watching right now. It doesn't really seem to be very many people, but I'm fairly new, so I can understand that people are waiting. So who's going to be first in the live chat? Well, one of the differences that I want to do with this one is, unlike many of the other live streams that I've seen, where people, write stuff in the side chat, I want this one to be something that you can join in. So you can come and join this conversation. We can talk together. This will allow us to talk about what you're modeling, what kind of modeling you do, what detail level you do, whether you do DC or DCC, what era you do, things of that nature, what projects you've got going on at the moment. And it's just a nice way for people to literally talk to each other. I mean, imagine this is a bit like going to the pub and hanging around with your mates, or model railway club. That would be a better analogy. So, you get to go to a model railway club and, rather than the people that are doing the modeling, the people that stand around chit-chatting, that kind of thing. So, so what kind of thing have I been doing lately? Well, I've been kind of slack. I've been doing some research things, and I've been doing some 3D modeling drawing, but that's not quite, ready yet. But I've also been buying a few things. Recently, I bought a class 33, another class 33. This is 10 of these things I've got now. And this is a Helljam one. It was secondhand from a fellow that lives not too far away. Hello, Dave Trade Time, GW Hereford, Graham Alex, and Darren Eglin. So this is the one I got. It's been weathered, although not fantastically well. But that doesn't matter because it'll be stripped down anyway. And this will be coming A33O. So the front end, you can see it's got the pipes on it. I will be rebuilding it. The roof fan and grill will be replaced. Shore Plan have recently produced some body side grills, so they'll be doing this. I'll be doing those as well. And the D&E Showcase show is coming up on the 2nd of June, which for me is the best show of the year. I don't do steam engines, so it's all diesel electric for me. And for me, it's the D&E Showcase show, which is at Burton-on-Trent on the 2nd of June and 3rd. That's the best show of the year for me. There's no steam trains, it's all modern image, diesel electric type thing. So I just love that show. And it's actually kind of hard to go to in a way, because I'm fairly well known in diesel electric circles, and many. I've been a member of the society for more than a decade now, I believe. So as a result, I'm active on the D&E forum, which means that people know who I am. It's like, all right, Dave, how you doing? That kind of thing. So every time you make a step, there's someone else you meet, and you end up having a 5-minute conversation. And next thing you know, it's 4 o'clock and the show finishes at 5, and you rush around to try and get all the things you want to, have a look at. So, it's not always easy going to a show like that. But it's a fantastic show. If you've never been before, I highly recommend it. There's a video on my channel from last year's show where I did some video footage from some of the things there. There was a little bit of an error, though. My video camera, so I film it with the video camera, and unfortunately I made a bit of a mistake. So Simon Bendall, who is the editor for Model Rail Express, he had a display of rail freight livery, the subsector rail freight livery, with different freight stock behind it. And what happened was I walked down the length of it filming, And then I chatted with his dad for a little while, and then moved on. Unfortunately, when I looked at the footage, this was a new camera for me at the time, and I was still learning how to use it. So when I looked at the footage, what I had was about 4 or 5 minutes of the floor and the stall behind me, and then a tiny bit of footage that I've somehow managed to record of it, and then there was another couple of minutes of me talking to his dad, and then there was 4 or 5 minutes worth of me filming the contents of the inside of my bag. So basically what I'd done is I'd hit the record button and the pause button, and so I paused the bits that I was filming and recorded the bits that I didn't want to record. So, oops. So these things happen. It's it's a comical thing sometimes. But anyway, so so I shall be buying the parts to do. Excuse me, if ambulance going by. So I'll be buying a whole bunch of body side rails from Shawplan. This model is good. The only thing that's missing off one of the front windows is missing, which is a shame. But they do glazing kits, so that'll be fine anyway. I also need to do some extra work on the chassis because there's a notch here, which the model that I'm doing won't have. Plus, I do a fair. If you've been watching my channel at all, I have. I'm stripping down a whole bunch of them. I actually have 6 of these on my work bench right now. So the fact that I'm not producing as much as you think, this is only down to I'm doing the same task multiple times. I currently have 9 etched roof and grill sets that I've done. Now I've got another loco. I'm going to need one more. So this is the that's one thing I bought. Back in the box. Just for those who've just joined, thank you for watching. Hello, Tony Docks, Scrapline, Anthony Sutton, who is also looking forward to the D&E show, and Hadley Moor Railway. Good evening to you all. And just for those who haven't seen so far, you can come and join me. This isn't just me talking to the camera and reading from the side chat. You can come and join. I posted it in the YouTube Model Railway community group. So there's a watch link, which you're watching now, obviously, and there's the join link, so you can actually join me. Another option, if you want to join, is actually I'll turn that on. You can send me a message through Gmail, so I can send you the link directly. Let me open that up. That's the account I'm looking for. And Gmail. So yeah, and also if you want to, you can contact me directly through there's a Hangouts tab. So if you're using Google, up in the top corner you have a little dice box thing. It's a 3x3 square, and if you click on that, you'll be looking for a green Hangouts box. It's like a little speech bubble. If you click on that, you can send a message to me directly through that. So yeah, and yes, so excuse me for rambling. So what else have I bought? Well, I bought a pair of these. These are a pair of Regional Railways Class 31s. I paid £20 for them. Actually, it was 19 each. But this was from a store in Stockport. They have, and it's one of those. It's inside the market. So it's fairly rare. I kind of feel sorry for him really because he doesn't have a proper shop to speak of. He can't get certain orders. So you know, some companies they won't deal with anybody unless they've got a shop. So it doesn't really help small retailers who maybe work off the web or something like that. But yeah, so here are a pair of these. They're brand new, fresh works, you know, fresh, good quality. Now I'm going to have to do a little bit of modification to this one, because in the era that I model, the Bachmann model has vacuum brakes here and here, whereas in the era that these operated, they'd been converted to air brakes or dual brakes. I'm pretty sure it was air brakes only. So that's going to have to be a modification that needs to be done. It's not difficult. One of the things that I'm looking to do in the long term is to produce an etch, 3D modeling components, so that you can go to Shapeways and purchase them, and they'll, you know, cast them in they'll 3D print them for you and mail them to you, and you'll just be able to, you know, remove some parts and stick these ones on. That'll be easy. Another part that I intend to do are the electric train heating jumpers and cables and receptacles. So, you know, these are important items that you see on, you know, pretty much anything that's got any coaches. They have these. Most locomotives, certainly ones that have electric train heating, they have them. But I'll also be doing the CAT cables, such as like class 37s and 40s. The one on the Bachmann model is a little bit overscale, and so, you know, these are the kind of details that I want to produce. So yeah, so when I went, excuse me, when I went to pick up this, the chap also had some other things for sale, and, you know, so I picked up this. Now this is an old Airfix. This is from mid-80s, I think, maybe even early 80s, 82, something like that. But this is a Mark II-D. The current Hornby do one of these, although they've now replaced it with the E largely. But yeah, so this is the Mark II-D. It's an old model, but actually it's very good for its time, and the bogies are still highly regarded. The underframe components are a little bit dated by modern standards. Now you might think, well, why would I buy this? Why not buy the Mark II E? I have lots of the Mark II's, but I'm going to be converting this into a Mark II C. This is going to be one of the 19XXX series ones, so it's an FK, so the interior will have to be redone, so that it's a corridor-based coach. And there were a number of these that were converted from FKs into SKs, so they declassified them. So effectively, they just replaced the stripe and just made it a standard blue for a blue-grey one. But the Mark II, for those who don't realize, there's a number of different kinds of Mark IIs. So the first Mark IIs, which Bachmann do, those are they're Mark II Zs and As. So the Z is a Mark II, but it's classed as a Mark II Z. The Mark II Z were the original ones, and they had vacuum brakes only. They were designed for, you know, to basically be Mark I coaches, but a modern version of them. The Mark II-A have air brakes. The suggestion I've always heard is that the A in Mark II-A is air. So they can't work with Mark IIs and Mark Is unless they've been the Mark Is have been fitted with air brakes as well, or dual brakes. The Mark II-B is similar to this in a way. It's got wraparound doors. It's got a toilet at each end instead of the Mark II-A and Z, which has got two toilets at one end, a door, and then the door in the center. They got rid of the door in the center. They moved the doors to the end, and they're wraparound doors. So instead of being a small door, much like this, where you have to imagine. Sorry, it's always hard looking on the. My screen is mirrored, so it is this end. So here, where the door starts there and continues here. So with the Mark II-B, they had the hinges on the outside, so the entire door opens up. It's a much wider door, much nicer to get in and out of. The roof is more or less flat, but with ventilators on, and then the body side has got large windows with a sliding door, much like the Mark II Z and A. The Mark II-C has a flat roof with a hatch at one end, which this has. If we can, I'm going to zoom it in a bit, show you a bit closer. So it's got the hatch at one end, and it has the same style windows. It's exactly the same as the Mark II-B. The only difference is that it's got ducting in it to allow air conditioning. So they had an idea of, if you've ever seen a Chiltern Class 165, how they used to have, hopper windows at the top, but they've replaced them with a piece of, solid piece of glass, and put some ventilators on, air conditioning ventilators on the roof. Similar kind of thing with the Mark II-C. The Mark II-D was the first air-conditioned coach, so they got smaller windows on them. The Mark II-E was a modified version of it with a slightly larger toilet. And also, it's not on this type, but on the TSOs, the toilets are staggered. So if you imagine the toilets on this side and that side, whereas on the Ds, the toilets are on the same side. They're on one side and not on the other. And then for the F, they made a smaller toilet, but they had different air conditioning equipment underneath. They had the temperature limited ones instead of the stones one. Although some have stones, so there's a little bit of watching to do for that. Now, you can see that this does not have hopper windows in it. However, Shoreplan do an etch which has the hopper windows on. So I'll hold it up for you. So the goal behind it is that, so what I intend to do is scrape off everything between the bogies and replace all the body side windows with, so make the hole bigger for the window. And if we just hold that up, if you can imagine placing a bigger window there. So this, I'll be converting this into an XFK, so an SK, which was formerly an FK. And I've got a similar plan, unless someone brings them out beforehand. I have a similar plan to do the same thing for to take Mark II-D TSOs and to use these same window frame etches to be able to make Mark II-Bs and Cs. And again, everything between the bogies will go, and I'll make 3D printed designs so that you can just plug them on. So yeah, so I'm just going to say hello to more people that have joined since. So hello, New Junction, Beatonhow Junction, Tony Dogs. Oh, sorry, you're already there. Yeah, welcome. I hope you're enjoying the show. As I mentioned earlier, you can come and join if you wish. So send me a message that way. You can also do it through the Facebook group if you wish. So look, no, nothing there so far. Hello, Sparky. Welcome. So, yeah, that's the goal with this coach. And the nice thing is that these are 10 a penny, so to speak. You can pick these up very cheaply. eBay, you can pick them up for £5. Sometimes you can get one or two, a couple of them for a tenner or something like that. FOs. If you ever want to buy trains, whether it's going to Hattons or whatever. If you want to make a full train, my suggestion is, if you want 2 trains, let's say, my suggestion is buy the TSOs first. The TSOs, they go quickly, because when you look at a train that's, let's say, 8 coaches, what do you get? You get a brake coach, you get 5 TSOs, you get maybe a brake van, and you get a first-class coach. So the first-class coaches, when I don't know if you realize this, when manufacturers make models, they make about 3,000 of them for the UK market. So when you look at a manufacturer that's bringing out, the TSO, the brake, the first class, and a buffet car, let's say Mark III coaches, for example. So they've got a TGS, they've got TSOs or TSs, they've got the first class coaches and the buffet car. So that's 4 different coaches. Each one of them, 3,000 are made. So you need 4 TSOs and a TGS. So the TGSs, buy them last. The first class coaches, again, you don't need, you're only going to need 2. You're not going to need 10 of them. So when it came to these coaches, you find the FOs around all the time. You go looking for TSOs, they're much more expensive because people want more of them. So simple. So, and then finally, I've been looking into someone on the D&E forum, Guy Linux, at Molyneux. He posted a link from YouTube about something called reflow soldering, and I thought, wow, this is brilliant. So I'm going to screen share it. Let me find it first, though. Give me a moment, please. Okay. Okay. So we've got someone who's built. He's got a circuit board, and what he's got here is solder in it's solder paste for surface mount soldering, and it's in a syringe, and he squirts it along the contacts, and you think, wow, how can you do that? If you solder that, then the contacts will all be bridged. But so he applies the paste, and then puts the blob a little bit more. So bit of solder. This is for possibly a capacitor because it says C1, maybe resistor. So he drops the circuit board, and you can see how small this piece is because of the size of the tweezers. It drops it into place. Okay. And then he uses a hot air gun. So this is about 300 degrees Celsius. And if you watch, this is some masking tape to hold it into place, but if you watch, it will burnish. It gives an illustration of the heat that's involved. Just going to jump it forward a little bit. You can see how it's getting burnt on the edges. And he's heating up the solder. And this is very clever. See how it's really burnt on the end. If you look, you see how it's all effectively the capillary action has sucked the solder onto the tabs, and it's actually dragging that capacitor into position. Now, I've done surface mount soldering for LEDs, but the way that I would normally do it, So the way that I would normally do it is, if you imagine there's my circuit board and imagine there's a break, I would take a bit of solder and put a drop of it there and another drop there, and then I would take my tweezers and drop it across the joint, and then use my soldering iron again and just, you know, use my tweezers on the top just to hold it, make sure it doesn't move away. And then I would just heat, you know, zap the end to heat it up, and the solder would melt, and then zap the other side. And it just, you know, holds it into place. But you can never really get it properly flat. It's always kind of slightly raised on the top. So it was, I thought it was a fantastic way of doing the soldering. So it's captured my imagination. So I'll give you an example of a circuit board I designed. So this is a circuit board that I designed for a model that I did for somebody. So a friend of mine asked me to paint a loco for him, and I went, you know what, while I'm at it, I'll stick a full set of DCC lighting in it for him. So what we have is, I've designed it for the Hornby 8249 decoder, just the cheapo, like £15, I think they are. And the idea is that you've got your different colored wires. So the blue is the common return. So we've got red LEDs, we've got yellow and white, and the brown pieces here are the resistors. So what happens is, when you put the current down through the green wire, so that's function 1. Function 2 will be the yellow at the other end of the train. Function 3 is the green, and function 4 would be the purple, which is the floating one. So what happens is, if we're going for the red lights first, so the power will come down the green, will go across here. These black lines are the brakes in the tracks in the circuit. So it will come down the green, it will jump across this one to light it, jump across this one to light that one, and then through the resistor. That's a 1K resistor. It gives a good depth, you know, it's not too bright. And then back through the common return. And then for the white, it takes 2 tracks. Now, something to bear in mind when you're dealing with white LEDs, they use a different system. I believe they're blue, but they use some kind of rectification kind of thing, so that they pulse the energy or something, and they appear white. So they have a different resistance tolerance or something. I'm not fantastic with electronics, I'm really not. I'm good at following instructions, but I don't know how electronics work other than the basics. So what happens with this is, if you were to put all 3 in a row, then one of these would be dimmer and it would look wrong. So the way it works for this is, it comes for the white. We'll go for the white first. So that'll be the white light in the center. So it comes down here, goes underneath, it goes across that white resistor LED, then back across the resistor through the common return. And then for the yellow lights, it comes across here, around the top, across there, across the resistor, back to the common return. So this is a very simple circuit board. And what I've done it on, I draw it on CAD, and I'm able to zoom it in really big. And the way I design them is, I use some copper clad board, and I've created the design on the computer, and then I've done it at 1-to-1 size, so it's on the screen it's actually tiny. Or sorry, on the screen it looks big, but when you print it, I print it out on paper, and then using the paper as a guide, I just carve it out. Now, there are other ways of doing it. You can use chemicals, and you can use black markers, and you can draw the black lines and then stick it in a form of acid which will eat the black. This is the same as etching is done. When you buy etched parts, it's done in a similar sense. So so the simple design is, you have one at each end, and you just have the different wires going up to the decoder. And you can have all of them on at the same. You can have both on at the same time. I like the Hornby decoder because I mean, it's not so good if you're using sound, but if you're not using sound, it's fantastic because I really don't like when you got a loco and it's got switches underneath so you can turn the head and tail lights on and off. Sorry, the tail lights on and off. I don't want that. I want it to be fully functional from the controller. I don't see why this is a problem. I don't see why they don't use 4-function decoders as standard. Where you've got the headlight number 1 end, headlight number 2 end, tail lights number 1 end, tail lights number 2 end. Excuse me, that's number ambulance. So the Hornby decoder is able to do that. But within the circuit board that it comes with, it's not, unless you modify it, which takes a little bit of work. So I've done designs to make my own circuit board. So I'm probably going to start making my own version of this. And this is, you can buy these components from electronics suppliers. And the idea behind it is that, this is a standard 8-pin plug, like the 8249 has. And this could drop in a Bachmann 37 or a 47. So what happens is there's function 1, and there's function 2, function 3, function 4, though I've got the colors the wrong way around. I think this is my first attempt at it, and I realize I made a mistake. But the idea is that the 2 red ones are your pickups on either side. The black is the pickups from the other side. The gray and the orange are your motor wires. And then you've got your common return, which goes to the end. And so if you imagine dropping this in your loco, so you just connect the wires to it. So your headlights go to that one, your tail lights go to that one, and there's your common return. And then the same on the other end. So it's a very simple design. But this, let me just take a drink. So with this reflow soldering thing, I bought the heat gun, I bought some components, I'm waiting for the heat gun to arrive and the last couple of pieces. So one of the things that I want to build is this. Now again, I'm not very good at electronics, but I can follow instructions, and these are the instructions. It's fairly simple. So this is a 555 timer, and this is to make the flashing tail light you get at the back of the train. So it can be a circuit board that's about the size of a 20p piece, using one of these, and this is about 4 or 5 millimeters across, and it's got 4 legs on either side. The numbers aren't in the correct line, because for a 555 chip you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But what it's showing is that you've got the pickup power to the tracks. It goes across a diode that'll make sure the energy goes one way only. Because remember, with DCC, you've got the frequency is going backwards and forwards because it's AC. So AC is going, it's giving plus, negative, negative, plus. It's doing this at high frequency. So you've got a capacitor here. There's another small capacitor there. 2 resistors, another resistor for the LED, and that's the LED there. So my goal is to take something like, let me go to wagons. I'm very organized. So let's take our standard BR brake van. Let's just take this one for an example. So I would like to have one of these with a flashing tail light on it. So how would I do that? Well, I can put my circuit board inside there, drill a couple of tiny holes there, and just use some wire, the same kind of stuff you might use for handrails or something. So you can drill through that, go down underneath, then go this way, then go up into the cabin where your circuit board is located, and be able to have flashing lights on it. So I think this has got a lot of scope for use on it, and you can stick it on any wagon you want, or the backs of coaches. So yeah, since I've got my images open, let me show you what I meant about the coaches. So as I mentioned before, there's Mark II, 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D, 2E, and 2F. So in the Mark II Cs, I think I've got it in here. So this is a Mark II C, and if we look, we can see that the roof has got the hatch in the same place as the Mark II D I showed you earlier. Those have got the wraparound doors. Those are the same. It's also got the rubber plate on the edge. And then, so it's basically open up the windows with a bigger hole and stick an etch on it, and then replace with 3D modeling components the stuff between the bogies. This is a model you can't get at the moment unless someone brings one out. And of course, you just know that if I produce, if I come up with it, Bachman, Hornby, whoever will, bring one out. Just my luck. You may another thing about the Mark II Cs is sometimes they've got different windows. Sometimes they've got the tall ones with the little ventilator at the top. Other times they've got the Mark II D type. So in fact, there's the difference between the two. Both of them, I think, are Mark II Cs. So let's see if there's another one. There you go. There's Mark II C with the normal size ones. So, like I say, it's got room for interest. Yeah, I know I've got a picture of them on. Maybe it's in first. Well, that's the first on its own. Ah, there we go. There's a 19 series one. So it's a former FK that's been declassified into an SK. And the etch that I've got can do these windows. And this was a part of a train. They had a number of them, but towards the latter part of the 80s, so 89, there were several of them allocated to Derby Etches Park. So they would be used on regional railways or provincial trains at the time, heading in the area. So you might see them on the Skegness to Derby and onwards to Crewe and Llandudno. You might see them on services from Norwich to Liverpool. So they'd be used across the Midlands area largely on provincial trains. So usually behind Class 31s, possibly 47s. So, like I say, interesting stuff. And the components I was talking about, let's take so when I was talking about the electric train heating items, I'm talking about these. Nobody does these at the present, so being able to have them would be nice. So these are former Mark II FOs that have been declassified and turned into standard class coaches. I have a rake of these. These are the ones I have are the Hornby Mark II-E, but I'm going to convert them because I've done a 3D model design for the underframe component there. There's not a lot of difference between a Mark II-E and a Mark II-F from the outside. The primary difference is some of the, this has got a box over the, has got a plate over the top, and the air conditioning pack there is different. And on the other side, there's a hole here where there's another box on the other version. So it's a, and the train that I've got is to be an East Coast mainline commuter train. Back in the late 80s into the early 90s, it lasted for about a year or so. The East Coast Main Line didn't have enough trains, so they had HSTs. The Class 91s were just starting to come into traffic, so they were using them with Mark III coaches, but they still needed another train for commuter trains that would go from Huntingdon down to King's Cross. And during the weekend, they would use them on other trains as well. They used to go up to Leeds from time to time on the weekends. So they were for relief work, largely. So there were two trains, one that ran out of Paddington for the southwest, and another one that came out of King's Cross. When the Class 91s came out, once the Mark IV coaches were being produced, they started to have enough stock that they could dispense with it. And then, of course, you know, the HSTs that were being used up to Edinburgh, they could be dispensed with and replaced. You know, they could be transferred over to cross country and Great Western. So they were able to, you know, the Great Western, for example, was able to take seven coach trains and turn them into 8 coach trains, and the cross country, well, they only use 7 anyway. So the 8 coach trains on the East Coast Main Line, they lost the coach and those that put in the Great Western ones, and the cross country, they got, you know, 7 coach trains, which allowed them to dispense with Mark II coaches and some other some Class 47s on the northeast southwest route. For the cross country, also needed Class 47-7s and Class 86s on the cross country trains. You know, they're using Mark IIs. So things got shuffled around a bit. There was also a goal on the West Coast Main Line where they were using Mark II Bs and Cs in their trains. They got rid of those and went all with Es and Fs primarily. So there was a lot of shuffling came on when the Mark IV coaches came about. But again, parts that I want to make for modelers will be the air conditioning unit and the electric train heating things, plus maybe some other components. I'd like to make a coach derivative of the air braking equipment. For example, let me show you the Mark 1's standards, Reed Railways. So this is one of the coaches I was showing you earlier, and if we look here, you can see that this has air conditioning equipment, but there's no vacuum brake pump. The vacuum brake piece is missing. Instead, there's the air brake piston. So still used as the same mechanism, and I've done this in model form already. You know, I fabricated some parts, and all I did was where the piston would have, you know, where the vertical piston was, and it's pointing down and has the little arm piece there, I just rotated it around and attached it to that. And then there's a similar one on the other side. So, oh, excuse me, one way. This one is a dual braked one, where you can see there's the air brake equipment there, there's the air brake piston, and there's the vacuum brake piston there. It's a little bit of fuzzy fit photo. So is that? It's still a bit hard to see. Yeah. Yeah, I've vacuumed up a lot of photos off the internet in my years, over the years, but a good illustration of the air braking equipment can be seen here. So there's this is the same coach. So here's the vacuum brake there. The air brake is just behind it, and then on the other side there's the air brake piston there. So it works that is a dual braked version. There you go. There's a good photo. So another arm can be here with the vacuum brake pump. That allows, for example, a charter train where you have, you can have, let's say you got a steam charter, and you got a, it has a diesel component section of it as well. So you can have that same train being used under air braking, which is more efficient, or vacuum braking. So you have a multi-use train, and it allows, in the BR days, it allowed them to put Mark 1s and 2 coaches together and run them as combined trains. So yeah, so these are these orange components here. Those are parts that I want to make as 3D printed parts that you can just buy on the internet, and when you get them, you'll be able to cut them off and put them on, just paint them orange and glue them on your model. And if you want, you can stick a piece of wire that goes up to here, so it'll be nice and simple. And I want to make all these parts as well. Again, you'll be able to just stick them on your models, and it'll make life easier than having to fabricate them and all that kind of thing. There will be designed specifically for Mark 1 coaches and other type 1s. So yeah, that's one of my goals for the future. I mean, I keep nothing in that one so far. Actually, I think I was mentioning before the Mark II commuter set. That's the old version. But yeah, there you go. That's it. So this is 1990, and it would run on the East Coast Main Line. This is at Leeds, so this would have been the Saturday one. Oh no, Bank Holiday Monday. There you go. So so this train is a brake coach. It's a Mark II-A brake coach, if I remember correctly, and then it's a rake of Mark II F FOs that have been converted into SOs with a standard BR brake van BG on the end, and it could be hauled either by class 89001 have a set, or a class 91 blunt end and pointy end going back south. So it's one of those things that adds a little bit of an interest for the railway that I want to build in the future. So just a nice change. So yeah. And just to show you the components, this is some of the work. I went down to the Crew Heritage Centre a few weeks back, and I took some photos and also measured things so I could get the details right. And so this is an air brake distributor. It's just giving me some guidelines. These are the this is the CAT cable, so the multiple working cable that you'll see on class 37s, 25s, 20s. The Batman one is probably about a third too big. The goal is to make it something that's that'll fit you nicely. And then there's a DBSO there, which I measured up the tabs for the TDM jumpers. So got all that right, plus the boxes that they slot into. Got the state of that cable. Yeah, just some other bits. This is the air brake tank. I also went down a Mark II-F to check sizes for the boxes. And then here's the socket for the TDM, for the electric train heating. So you would have the 600 amp output, and then it would plug into there. So that's a component that I'll be making. This is class 87 with the lights, also the TDMs plus the blanking patches, though I actually want to have a combination. Oh, a kettle went by with a couple of diesel locos on it. Oh yeah, there's another component I want to make. Some BR standard flashing lights. Again, when I was talking about the flashing light, this is what I mean. And the idea for the circuit board is you have the circuit board underneath, and if you can imagine having your wires coming out here and having your LED on it, and then having the lamp on, you know, with a hole through it, shine the light through. And then this is what I've been working on at the moment. I've done most of the work on it. I just need to do the details and this hatch, the cover for it, and then the plug part there. But so far I've done all this stuff here. So yeah, a lot of detail stuff. I was also fortunate to go on the roof of the Class 87. They had one of the chaps had been doing some work on it, and he was kind enough to you know, he invited me up, and there was one thing that I was quite surprised by, that the oil box, which is above the transformer, is in a rubber seal. I never knew that. Never noticed that before. I always thought it was just a piece of metal or something, but no, it's in a rubber seal. So Class 47 roof then. And then on the roof they've got it's opens and closes. So yeah, and you know, I took some other detailed photos and things. So these are the pistons under a Mark 1 coach. Measuring all those parts. It's all and stuff. Oh, hello, Cheeky Tech. Nice to see you drop by. And then there was a bit of a surprise because 47712 was there. Lady Diana Spencer, a loco that I'm modelling, although in Parcels Red livery at some point. And in the early days of multiple working system with these TDM jumper cables, well, it's a railway clearinghouse version. TDM was later, but on Class 87s and 86s, they used to have these clips, so you pull it down and pull it out, pull out the cable, and then clip it into the coach next to it. And the idea behind it, the multiple working system, is that it sends coded data through the PA system. So it just sends pulses of energy down the length of the train to a DBSO at the other end. Later version was DVT, and it's just one of the photos I took is, you know, you pull it down, you pull the cable out, and you just plug it into a coach. So it's a simple idea, but the problem they had with them is that the water would drain in them, and you know, the contacts were getting degraded. Now, it wasn't so bad with the 47.7s because, you know, they were always plugged up all the time. But when you've got an AC loco, where they're having to change the loco often, the contacts were getting degraded, so they changed it to a box. And it was literally just a 3-sided box, and then at the bottom it had a thin band in the middle, so the water could drain out either side. But yeah, so they replaced that system. But the 47.7s kept it. And then there's the 600 amp output, and again, I'm measuring it up to get the sizes so that I can get the model as close as possible to the real thing. Even, yeah, just measuring the end pieces. So the skirting. One of the things I don't like about the Bachmann model on the Bachmann 47 is the skirting is too low, and the angle here is way too steep. But that's a slightly different thing. and I don't know, they had some Polish amphibian vehicle. And then I wandered around down the road to Gresty Road depot, and they had some 68s there, another one at the back there, and also just behind there was an 88. It's the first time I'd seen one up close. I've only ever seen one in the distance. That's another 88 there. And then I went across the road and sort of rode my bike round to where the Freightliner one is, and then turned around and went back after taking a couple of photos. Didn't go on the railway part. And that's my trip home. So Jodrell Bank. So yeah, I took a nice trip away, and so let me just check if anyone's trying to get in. I haven't had anyone asked to join yet. Let me just check my email. No. And where's that handouts? Tab. Oh, hang on. Sorry, someone joined. Oh, someone's joined. Hello, Ronald. Can you hear me? Ronald? Let me... So, for the people watching, do you have any questions? I'm a vast suppository of information. There's, you know, when it comes to D&E stuff, there's not a huge amount I don't know. Anything you find interesting? Anything you would like me to talk about? What kind of modelling do you do? Put this back in the box. Okay, well, I'll tell you a little story. How about that? So, I'll tell you how I got into model railways. So, when I was a kid, my parents were in the Air Force, so we moved around a lot. And it's a little hard. I got something called Asperger's, so, you know, understanding, and I didn't know I had Asperger's until a few years ago. So, as a child, I was a little bit mixed up. I couldn't really, you know, work with other people very well. I was very much a loner, and that was fine. But I was very fuzzy about the rules. You know, I got very fixed ideas about how things should be. And so when I had, you know, kids of my own age who were one thing and then the other, and it's just like, well, how do you navigate through that? I found that very difficult. So too many people kind of, you know, gets to me. So going to a normal local, you know, school was a bit hard. So I ended up going to boarding school. It was a small, you know, small school, about 50 kids, you know. So it was much better for me. I was able to focus myself, and that was great. So well, when I first went there, we lived in Germany, but then after about 6 months, family came back home, and we were living at RF Holton, which is near Aylesbury, and then 6 months later moved to Chevenor in North Devon. So Barnstaple is the end branch, and went down to Exeter. So Scrapline will like this if he's still watching. Are you still watching Scrapline? Just send a message. So so every other weekend, they would send me home. So on a Friday afternoon, I would be at Doncaster Station, and then be all the way down to Exeter. It was 4 hours, and then another hour up to Barnstaple. So, well, this is 1987, 88. There's only so much you can do as a child on a train. Read a book, look out the window, listen to a Walkman, and bear in mind that Walkmans in those days had 4 AA batteries in them. They weighed a lot as well. And, and even with 4 batteries, it still only lasted for, about maybe an hour and a half. I had an extra set of batteries, but that was only half the journey. Still had, another hour or 2 to go. But even then, you just get bored. And so I was complaining about it one day, and someone said, well, why don't you get the train numbers? And so I effectively became a train spotter. I still have spotting books from my early days. So as a result, it was a good route, fantastic route. At Doncaster, you've got HSTs and Class 56s, occasionally 20s. So there was freight traction. You'd get down to Derby, and you got a whole bunch of different things. So I caught a couple of Class 45s that were on the last dregs of the Middle and Main Line. So they had HSTs and a few 45s. I even saw the 151. One of the 151s at some point, possibly both, because I saw him a couple of times. And then it would get down to Birmingham, where I'd see a couple, a few other things, and then it would be down to the southwest where I lived. And Exeter was fantastic location. And then it would be up to Barnstaple on the DMU, usually a 101 or a 108. So, but it was more of a number crunching exercise for me. It was something to do. It was a bit like those books, kids have for sit in the back of the car. Can you see a Volkswagen Beetle? Things like that. Can you see a sign? So-and-so sign. And it's just like something to keep them occupied in the back of the car. Because of course these are in the days before sat nav and tablets that you can stick on the back and let the kids watch the cartoons while you drive. So I was too old for that school and ended up going to a local comprehensive, but I didn't do so well, so I ended up going to another boarding school, which is where I finished school. And when I was there, I met a chap called James Morris, and he was much more interested in trains than I'd ever come across before. So he got Rail magazine and Motive Power magazine. This would have been 1989. So just under the train. Excuse me. I'm gonna pour myself another one. So so he was much more into it, and I was able to read the magazines, and it's like, oh, there's a lot more to it than this. It's not just like scratching numbers off a book. This is something much more interesting. So it became more of an obsession. Thing about Aspies tend to have fixed focus interests. My fixed focused interest is trains. And even now, in a box in the corner over there, I've got old notepads that I wrote in many years ago with and I've got different what I saw, and also certain rakes of coaches, because one of the things that I like to do is to have proper trains, not just it's just another I got 5 TSOs all with the same number. I like to have individually numbered coaches, and I like to have them in specific sectors. So I have a video that I'm going to make soon, because I have years worth of these Platform 5 combo books. Some of them are the ones I used in the day. You can see that You know, the blue ones are ones I've seen, the white ones are ones I've not. And you know, so yeah, I've saw most stuff, and this is 1996. You know, so in these books, you have all sorts of details in them, and you can see if I can hold these up, so we can see the yellow ones, the ones I'm modeling. But if we look, it's kind of hard going because this is backwards on my screen. So we can see here, this is a Manchester coach, and it's ICCX. ICCX meaning intercity cross country. So when you look at a train, you can figure out what coaches are what. This is, you know, I really enjoy that aspect of the hobby, being able to observe things. So yeah, my brain just got sidetracked. So so I was telling you about my my journey. So I would write down rakes of coaches. Most of the trains that I'm modeling are based upon actual sightings that I had in those days. I also watch YouTube videos, and I'll, you know, write down lists of things. So, for example, you know, this is a notepad. So someone posted a video the other day, and I went through it with the different types. You know, that's one train. You know, that's one train, and those are the coach types on it. You know, so this isn't an Anglian one with a class 86 there. Excuse me. So what you can do is you can look at a photo and use one of these books and figure out what the coaches are, or at least make a reasonable estimation. I mean, I'll give you an example. So, excuse me, that hot went down the wrong hole. So, this is something that Dave Class 47 might be interested in. So I've got 2 folders here, which has got you know, the push-pull sets from the Glasgow to Edinburgh and Aberdeen routes. So these are the Mark IIIs. So it's Mark IIIs with a DBSO and the Class 47 on the other end. So these are all Mark IIIs. But there was Mark II versions that ran to Aberdeen. You know, in fact, this is Mark III, that's Mark II. And you can see they made it a different stock. Now, I'm going to use this photo, which I found recently. And I can identify every single one of those coaches from what they look like. So this nearest one is a Mark IIZ. Now, Mark IIAs and Mark IIZs look basically the same. The difference is that the Mark IIZ is vacuum braked, the Mark IIA is air braked. However, back in the 1970s, ScotRail had several trains for the early version of this kind of formation, where they had a Class 27 at one end, another Class 27 at the other end, and a Raker Mark II coaches in between. And they didn't have enough modern coaches to do it. So what they did was they used Mark II Zs, and they put air braking equipment on them. So if I go into this book here, unfortunately, I'm going to have to show that I'm getting old because I need my glasses. So if I look at the Mark II Z, so if we look here, so here are my Mark II Z, and if you can see, it says AC2Z. So we can look at these and let me look at them. Okay, so if we look here, if you can make that out, the star is air brake by means of disc brakes. So you can see there, this one's a heated one which is transferred later. But these ones with the stars on, you can see it's got EC written on it here. So EC, Edinburgh, Craig and Tinney, provincial, ECX, what was it? PSEX. So you can, there we go. So you can see that the ones with the stars on, so we got the Network Southeast ones here, which are NWRX, that's Western region. So these are these ones would be working out of Paddington on the Oxford Banbury Cambridge, Oxford Banbury service. And then you got the Inverness ones in Scotland. Carlisle had some, so they would be used. CL, that's over here. So CL, those would be used on the Sutherland Carlisle, for example. But like I say, these ones are S, and if you can see, S for ScotRail. Sorry, I'm afraid the camera's not showing it very well. Let's see if it will focus in. Come on, camera. Let's drop this down. Let's try again. If I can keep it flat. Come on. Doesn't matter. Okay, so let's look at our photo again. Okay, so this is a Mark IIZ. Okay, so if I look at my screen, if I look at my book, so we've got 5146, which is ScotRail liveried one. So we're looking for ScotRail liveried Mark IIZ. So 5146, 5152 and 53, flip over the page, 5176, 5197, there you go. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we got 5. So we can narrow down which coach number that is. That coach number there is going to be one of those coaches. Now, you don't need to know every single number of every single coach, but you can replicate this train by, you paint it in the right color and you look in the book and you say, okay, well, if I renumber it into one of those, at least that's representative. At least it's accurate to what number it might be. So the next sets of coaches, we've got these 3. Now, the first 2 are the same. You can see this one's got a red band on it. I'll explain that in a moment. So these 2 here, now, do you remember before I was talking about Mark II Ds, E's and F's? So this is an air-conditioned coach. We can tell that because of the window type. And if we look, we can see the toilet windows are on the same side. That means that they are Mark II Ds. On a Mark II E and F, this toilet will be on the other side of the coach. So when you look at it, there'll be a toilet on one side and it'll be blank on the other. But because they're the same, this is the Mark II D. So this is the Airfix, Dapol, Hornby Mark II D model. And you can get them. You can get them in the city livery, you repaint the stripe, you're sorted. These are a little bit different because you'd have to repaint it, and then this vehicle here, you can see how, like the toilets, there's no toilet windows, but you got the blank ends. That makes it a Mark II D because the toilets are on the other side, and because it's got the red stripe, this is a Mark II D TSO. Actually, before I do that, let's go back to these for a second. I just remembered something. So in my book, let's go to Mark II D. So let me just turn the camera on. So that's this section here. So now we're in our Mark II Ds, and we can see that there are ScotRail ones at EC. So these are the coaches that are on that train. Okay. And if I remember correctly, when I looked it up the other day, there are 15 of them. So again, we can take those two coaches and we can estimate with a good range which two coaches those are. So then we've got this third coach. So that is a TSOT. Now TSOTs are fairly unusual. There weren't that many made. There were 20 of them. And what they were it's a micro buffet. So what they've done is they've removed the seating compartment, and they put a little counter. So you've got a guy with a trolley, or a lady with a trolley, and and they can hand out sandwiches and things like that. It's not hot food. They might have a boiler for cups of tea, but that's about it. So they used them on long distance ones, but not trains that they needed a full buffet car. They didn't have people dining. It was just, sandwiches, and a cup of tea kind of stuff. Good old BR sandwiches. So in this book, if I turn the camera off, sorry, there's the camera. So here's our micro buffets. And if we look, we can see that there are some layer-based ones which were used on they're used on the local old intercity services, and then we've got the ScotRail liveried ones. So those, they were used on this train. So we have. So if we look at this coach, it is either 6601, 6604, 6605, 6613, 6614, or 6619. So theoretically, there were 6 trains, 6 formations that were used for Aberdeen trains. And then we got this blue-grey coach here. Now, we can see that it's got a yellow stripe on it. And if I zoom in a little closer, you can see that, can you see how the ventilators are all in a row there? So if we compare to this one, this is a TSO, you can see how, if you've looked at the roof on Mark 1 and Mark 2 coaches, the ventilators are effectively on 2 rows offset in the middle, but they zigzag. So these are just standard ventilators. So this is a TSO. But this one is an FK, because the corridor is on this side, and the corridor's on this the other side rather. So this is our corridor FK coach. So the FK is in the 13XXX series. So if I skim over now, if you remember, I mentioned that you got air braked and vacuum braked. So this by this period, there weren't any FKs left in Mark 2Z FKs. They were all A's by now. So we can look at FKs in this period, and if I show my camera again, so these are the FKs, and we can see that there is 1, and is there 2? Let me just double check. No, so there's only 1. So now this photo is from the previous year, but if we were going to operate a train in this year, in 1989, there is the 1 coach it could be. So you could make this train and it would work. It would look right. It doesn't all have to be in the same livery, but there you go. EC, So it's, so we can narrow it down. Within these coaches, FKs, they're NWRX, which is the Oxford Banbury ones, and then we've got Transpennine ones, And finally, NSSX, which this one's EH. Well, EH means that it's Eastleigh, and that would have been the boat train. So the London to Southampton, or possibly even Weymouth Quay. So we've got all the data we need to figure out what this train is. And of course, the final coach is, and you can just about see the end there, it's a DBSO, which is what Bachmann's bringing out very soon. So, and those are the 97 XX ones. So in 1989, now by 89, the 158s were just starting to come in. So these coaches were being sent around, but oh no, sorry, at this time they still had all 14 on paper anyway. I know that they were taking them out of service and 158s were being brought in, and then they were split around. They were used in Anglia, so they got refurbished at Derby. The end plates were removed, and the corridor section was removed and cleaned up a little bit. And then once they were done, they went down to Devonport dockyards, and I saw a couple on trains down there for conversion with the TDM equipment. So yeah, so you can look at a train like this and you can figure out what this train is just with some basic observation. So if someone wants to do this train, all these coaches are available with right now, with the exception of the DBSO, which is coming very soon from Bachmann. So this is a Mark II-Z, you'll have to repaint it. These are Mark II-Ds, you'll have to paint, you'll have to use transfers or paint the red stripe pale blue. This one, yeah, you'll have to do that, and you'll have to modify, paint the red stripe there, and you'd have to modify the counter. And then this one's just a Bachmann Mark II-A FK. Again, you can just get that out the box, just renumber it, maybe stick ScotRail stickers on it. There you go. And then the Bachmann DBSO. And just so you can see another little resource that's useful, the Barrymore group, they've got the PDFs of the books for the various types. So if I just shove that over there, let's turn that off. So this is the BR book, and these show the different coaches and what the interiors look like. So you can see this is an FK. That's the Mark II-Z FK. That's the Mark II-A FK. And it gives you dimensions and things like that. So that's the Mark II-A again. There are different lots. That's a Mark II-C, and we can see, this is. Do you remember I was mentioning the Mark II-D that I'm going to put new window frames on? This is what it will be. So you can see there's the corridor for it, and a couple of toilets at the end. So it gives you an idea of how to put it together, and you can see the different windows. That's a B. There's the Mark II-D FK. That's an SK, so standard corridor. So, yeah. Now, that is one of the ones I was talking about. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that is one of the Mark II C. You can see Mark II C SK, and that's a former FK that's been declassified. So let's skip through CK, BFK. TSO. It should be after these. So here's our Mark II-B. So in fact, this is what I was talking about earlier. So there's your first class coach. Sorry, your Mark I coach. So there's the Mark II-D TSO. I'm just taking the drink. And you can see how it's got 2 toilets, a set of doors, 4 window compartments, another set of doors, 4 window sectioned compartment, and then another vestibule. Exactly the same. The only difference is air brake. Mark II-B, that's got the wraparound doors at the ends, toilets at each end on the same side, and then just one big compartment, you know. And also notice how it's only got 1 seat there, so people can get through easily. Same again. No table there. No table there. That's the Mark II-D. And if we look, can you notice how it's got the toilet on one side? Both toilets on the same side, sorry. Whereas on the E, toilet on one side, luggage rack, toilet on the other side, luggage rack. The E, can you see the difference in the toilet? A little bit smaller in terms of width. You can see there. So, and then we got the Mark III. Mark III, that's the Mark II-F. That's one of the, that's a conversion there. And then that's TSOT, that's the one I was talking about before. So that was the one with a bit of a red stripe on it. So if we look, oh wait a minute, sorry, it's TSO conversion, sorry, try again. That's the TSO, no. So it's after these. I think it's further on. These are FOs, SOs, and something to notice, you got TSOs and SOs. SOs are rare. If you notice, it's got 2 seats and 1 seat. They're not first-class coaches either. If they were first-class coaches, they'd have 3 windows and 4 windows. That's a declassified. That's the Mark II-C. That used, you know. No, not that one. Looking for BSO. There was also BSOT at one point. Let's see. That's a DBSO. Now, DBSOs have a weird thing for me. If you notice on a TSO, on a DBSO, let me show you the photo. It's easier. So Mark II, Mark II-F, DBSO. Let's look at the ScotRail one because we were looking at ScotRail before. So a DBSO is a BSO that had a driving cab built into it, and it's got a cab door. So what you've got is you've got a door at the end and a door at the end for the compartment with the toilet and the 4 window section, and then you've got the guards area here, the guards office there, and then you've got this area to here, which was the luggage area. And it used to come to here and have a sort of like a zigzag corridor piece there. But when they converted them, they stuck a door in here and they put a window, and the window's in the end, a window on the side. But they didn't put another door on the other side. I always found that weird. If we look for another shot from the other side, find one, there we go. If you look, there's no door here. Never really understood why. Just a strange little factor for you. So, so here's your standard BSO, and you can see how toilet, compartment, vestibule area, guard's office with his door, and the other door on the other side, and then a luggage area, and it kind of goes zigzags across there. Whereas for the DBSO, they've got a vestibule there, but there's no window there. Now, the only thing I can assume is when you have, so if you notice, the doors open outwards here and inwards there and outwards there. So when the thing's in motion, you don't want to open the door. But for a driver, the door needs to open inwards. And the reason why it needs to open inwards is because you don't want to have a door flapping open if a train might come the other way. You know, imagine the door's not clicked quite properly across or something. So you don't want it completely pushed across. So you don't want it flapping outwards, because if another train comes along, bang, you've ripped off the door, damaged the train. You know, you've now got to take it out of service, all sorts of rigmarole that goes with that. So the door needs to open inwards. Well, to get from the cab down the corridor piece there, it's got a sliding door backwards and forwards. So the only thing I can assume is that they didn't put the door there because they couldn't have it working inwards, because it'd stop the door from being open, although I don't know why they couldn't have opened it that way, but whatever. So yeah, just a little odd for me. Just a little weird factor for you. There you go. So there we have a TSOT. Can you see how it's got the micro buffet counter there? So it's a storeroom with a toilet for the staff, I think. And this is the Mark II-D TSO, same story, micro buffet. So they've taken out one counter, one seating bay, and put in a small counter for sandwiches and things like that. And this is your storeroom where you can store your sandwiches and things. So you have a bunch out of them underneath, and if you start running out, you nip back in and grab them out and stack up. So yeah, that's a simple example of a train. And we can look at a variety of different videos to figure these things out. You know, you can, I haven't done that with Southeast yet. You know, we can look at a cross-country train and figure out what these coaches are with a reasonable expectation, what the numbers are going to be for them. Because this is a cross-country train, although that hides it a bit. The cross-country trains were short 7-coach trains generally, sometimes 6, mostly 7. So you got a BSO, a rake of 5 TSOs, and a RFB. So this is an RFB is a buffet car and a first-class coach combined. So 2 seating bays have been removed. It's got a little counter, and you know, it's got a microwave, and you know, again, it's not heavy food. You know, you're not getting like a dining experience here. We're not talking about a kitchen car. We're talking about a basic, you know, thing that people just want to have a sandwich and a cup of tea when they're riding, some pack of crisps, things of that nature. Hello there, Dungewood. How's it going? So, yeah. And this train would be hauled either by a Class 47 or a Class 86 in the ICCA pool, intercity cross-country pool. ICCA would be the locomotives, ICCX would be the coaches that go with them, and they would do certain routes. I'm going to make a video on this. I think it's interesting enough, but I'll try and condense it instead of rambling like I'm doing, I'm afraid. I'm sorry about that. And I apologize if I say you know a lot. It's a terrible habit of mine, but you know, it happens. Deliberate one thing there. So yeah, and I like to have prototypical trains, and I'll show you I'll show you my model list, which will give you an indication of how I arrange things. So this is my model list. Now, my model list goes back a long time. I've been playing around with this for, you know, this goes back to the to about 1991, 92, with the trains I used to see in the southwest, and I wanted to replicate them. Now I've tweaked it since, because I moved to Manchester in 91. My parents came out of the Air Force, and we moved out. Now this is, give you an idea, these are these are my class 33s, for example. So black ones are ones that I want, blue ones are ones that I own models of. Now it doesn't mean to say that they're ready to go. It just means that I'm working, you know, that they're models that I own. I might need to buy parts from whatever. And, you know, the class 33s that I've been working on lately, these are ones. So, you know, now there are some times that I've done, you know, replacements. So like, for example, 33008, I'm doing it twice. You know, and the idea is I wouldn't have them both on the layout at the same time. They would be on or off according to a time frame. When I mentioned earlier, when I went to Exeter, that was my prime location. I remember the first time I went there, I saw 4 class 33s that day, and I want to model them still. I saw 33008 and 111 on a ballast train, on a Meldon Quarry ballast train. And I saw 101 and 109 as well. So this one and those 3 I saw that day, and I'm doing them in that time period. You know, now sometimes it's like, do I really need them? Well, you know, these are ones I would like. There are some that I must have, and eventually I will get them. It may take decades, and it has done. It has taken decades, but you know, I own. It's about 130 locomotives. I own a lot of stock. I've got about 900 pieces. But all these blue ones are ones that I own, or you know, the black ones are ones I've not, and you know, the details about them. So I've got quite a lot of stuff. So, and I have an eclectic taste. I'm doing a bit of, I do too much, to be honest. Now you may notice here, these are ones that I own that have old Ringfield type motors, whereas the blue ones here are ones that have got modern motors. Now, I've got 2 Heljan class 86s, although I'll be sticking the class, the old Hornby body on the top of it, because the Heljan 86 body is a bit rubbish. I actually own 387s, but I've taken them off the list because the new Hornby one's coming, and I'll be replacing them. And just for those who might be interested, those models, those 2 or 387s I've got, they'll be ones that I'll be giving away as a part of a giveaway. But they will be getting extra work being done on them. So when I get 500 subscribers, that's the goal. When I get 500, I'm going to have a giveaway, and it's going to have at least 1 loco, possibly 2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one of these models. It won't be this one, but I'll do it up, and I'll give it headlights and tail lights with a decoder socket in it. You won't get a decoder with it, but it'll come with a circuit board where you can just plug on a Hornby 8249, and that will give you a loco that has working headlights and taillights in the direction of travel, and you just press function 1 or 2 on or off, function 3 and 4 on and off to put the taillights on. You know, this is something that one of my niggles that I kind of hate about the way Hornby and Bachmann have things right now is that they should have 4 functions as standard and not have this stupid switch underneath. I hate the stupid switch that turns on the taillights and headlights and taillights. I would rather have a working taillight at the, you know, on the number 1 end and the number 2 end that you just press a button on your controller, than have a switch that you have to take the model off, flick the switch so you can turn off the taillights and then put it back on the track. I would rather not have that at all, and just be able to flick a button on your controller to turn the lights on and off. and just have a standard 4-function decoder in it. Whether it's a sound decoder or a standard decoder. And you can, the 21-pin chip has 6 functions available on it, so it's not out of question being able to fit them. But for some reason, they keep on doing it with switches underneath. And even this new Batman 66 they're talking about, sorry, the new Hatton 66 that's been spoken about, has got switches underneath. I would rather not have cab lights and have switchable lights for the tail lights, because operationally that's how they work. But anyway, so, and again, I've got a few class 90s that will also be part of a giveaway at some point or other. Again, I'll put chips in them. So on my coaches, these are actual trains I saw or have been based upon records that someone else has given. So at the moment, I own a rake of Mark One Network Southeast coaches. One of my last videos was me renumbering them. So this is the work that needs, and I'm going to do some extra work on them still, because those electric train heating plugs and sockets, they need to be fitted to it. But once that's done, that train will be done. I'm also going to put lights in it as well. Then we've got a Mark 1, Mark 2 set. That's based upon a real photo that I took and recorded data. Then there's a couple of Waterloo. Excuse me, my voice is coming. Excuse me. So, excuse me, motorbike going by. So these are a couple of Waterloo Twexter ones. I may not do all of them. I may not do both in the end, but I'm going to do one as a charter train. So, a couple of buffet cars. One of them, this one here, I actually published in Rail Express magazine some years ago. I'll show you the article, in fact. So that's that's Rail Express magazine from several years back. And if I go back, there's my model, and you can see I did the air brake work on it. So it's dual brake, so it's got the piston there and the air brake there. And again, I've put the detail on it, and also put things like steps on the bogies and things like that. So regional railways, I've got a rake of Mark 1 coaches with for some northeast stuff. They could also be used for other things as well. And they're all based upon coaches that were around and operating things. So, for example, Northeast Local Hold, they were, excuse me, I can remove that one and just have the 3 TSOs and the BSK, and that can do the pacer replacements when the class 142 pacers were not very good. They had all sorts of mechanical issues with them, especially the gearboxes. So for when I first moved to Manchester in '91, they just started up the club trains. So it was fantastic to get those for haulage. I used to do them, a couple of times a week at the very least. So I've got 2 regional railways ones. If you notice, there's a Mark 2B here, which I've not got. That will be a Mark 2D that I will, a Mark 2D TSO, which I'll replace all the stuff between the bogies and put the new etched window frames on. That will be able to create that one. And the same was up there with one of the Network Southeast train. Then there's a blue-grey set, again, based upon real coaches at the time. I'm going to do a Transpennine one. So, yeah. And then this is what I was talking about earlier. So this coach here, you can see that's that Mark 2D I was holding up earlier, which will have the window frames on. And I'm doing a few of them, so a TSOT, and they'll be converted from those coaches. And that's based upon a real train. and then just some spare bits. So there's those two Ridge Railways ones you can see. B4 bogies, air braked, dual braked, A for air braked, V for vacuum brake, X for dual braked. And they were, Liverpool, Derby, trying to remember where that one was. So yeah, you can see how, they're set for the right codes. ScotRail, I'm not doing Scotland, but I do love the look of them. And so I'm going to do a couple of trains for the hell of it, really. It's just for the hell of it. So intercity charter trains. So these are the intercity white roof train. So they're used for the luxury charter services on the East Coast, out of Bounds Green. And they would work all over the country. They'd largely go up to Scotland. So they'd work up behind a 47 up to Scotland, and then it would go behind a 37-4 up in the Highlands, things like that. But I'm toying, these ones here are ones that I'd like, but they're faded out because they're not necessarily important. If I get them, I get them. If I don't, I don't. And so these are Mark III sleepers, and they with the white roof, and they were used on the Land Cruises. So you would effectively sleep on the train. You go for a 3-day trip across Scotland, and you'd sleep on the train. So an intercity charter train, something I added later. I wish I'd done it now. About 5 years or 6 years ago, when Bachmann had the TSOs out in intercity livery, they were going for £10 at Hatton's, and so for 100 quid, I could have bought a full train of them. But I decided, nah, I didn't really want that one. The charter train I wanted was the white roof one. But having thought about it, there are so many times you've seen charter trains with the black roof, intercity black roof stock, which was Liverpool based, and they did them in 2 trains effectively. They were done in 2 halves. They had about 6 or 7 sets of 6 coaches, and sometimes they would drop it at 1 or 2 coaches or something, but that was the general train. And then we've got some buffet cars so that I can maximize things out of different types. Some of them I'm going to have to convert because you can't get the 1600 series ones, so I'll have to convert that. So then the cross-country trains, so I'm doing 3 trains of that. All 3 are in intercity livery. One is a Raker Mark II Fs, which I've had to be very pragmatic. I want a lot of stuff. I'm a bit greedy in that way. So High New Freight Junction, Dave Furnival. So I hope people are watching. Are they? I got 5 people watching. Are they enjoying this? Am I rambling? Am I boring you to tears? Let me know. Have you got questions? So for and it is nearly 11 o'clock, so it's probably a reason why I should stop in about 5 minutes or so. I'll go through this list. So for the cross-country trains, I basically want 2 rakes of class 4786 hauled cross-country trains. This would be for the West Coast mainline stuff I do. So, because the idea for my railway is I'm going to have it with overhead wires, but I'll be able to just take, have either East Coast mainline stock or West Coast mainline stock. And, so I can have 90s and 86s and 85s and 81 and, things like that, different liveries. Or I can take all that off and put it on the other, use it on the East Coast mainline. So I'd have 47s with these cross-country trains. And, I'd have HSTs and class 91 and Mark IV trains. So that kind of thing. That's where my head's going. So, and these are based upon actual sightings, real trains that I saw and noted down the numbers way back in 1992, 93 kind of period. So, so there's two trains. One is a Rika Mark IIFs. One's a Rika Mark IIEs with a Mark IIF RFB. And then the third one is a cross-country train, which is made out of a big mixed bag. So it's a BSO, 4TSO, and RMBT, which is a different buffet type thing, and then a first-class coach. And what I can do is I can swap out that coach and stick in one of these coaches and turn it into a Mark 1 buffet car, you know. So I can mix and match things. That's the idea. The reason why these are pink are the you know, I've basically got the train. I just need a couple of coaches to finish it off. So the idea is I need a couple of Mark IIDs, and that I can finish this train and get it done. There's my East Coast mainline commuter train. So there's a BFK Intercity with a white roof, 17093. I got photos of it. A Mark II DFK, fairly unusual coach. I have to convert it out of Mark IID, but not a big deal. It's only the interior that's different, really. And then there's the rake of, you know, XFO Mark II F TSOs. And again, it can be hauled by 89 or a 91 generally. 890 can do it as well. So then I got the West Coast mainline stuff. So there were two types of trains. Let me show you a picture of what I mean. Coaches, train formations, Intercity, West Coast mainline. So you had the Mark III sets, which were, you know, basically class 90, 86, a 90, sorry, 86, 87, or a 90, with a rake of 8 Mark IIIs, generally 8, sometimes 9, and then a DVT on the end, a buffet car in the middle. So it's second class coaches, a buffet car, and a couple of first class coaches. And, you know, most of the time they were 87s or 90s. They did have a couple of, because it was IWPA or IWCA coaches, sorry, locomotives with the coaches to match. And then let's see, so 86 or 87 or 90 generally, but a few 86s were in it, and then a DVT on the end. Now, before the DVT came along, they would have had a standard BG instead. If you look at BGs, there are the 110 mile an hour based ones, which have special maintenance for their bogies. So, yeah, so that's that. But the other type of train were the Mark II and III sets. So you'd have the locomotive, usually an 86 or an 87 or a 90, and then it would be 5 or 6 TSOs, a Mark III buffet car, and 2 or 3 first class coaches, FOs, with the DVT on the end. So 2 Mark III coaches, the rest is Mark II. So that's what this represents. So these are the TSOs. These are the FOs. There's DVT, sorry, the buffet car and the DVT. Now, this one was originally blue, but now that Oxford have brought out this coach, I'm going to buy one for this train to make, you know, it's a much nicer model, but it's going to need some modifications to make it right. So this is the full train. Now, something to bear in mind here. I mentioned I was having to make a pragmatic approach. The Hornby brought out the Mark IIe, but the problem is it's got a couple of problems with it. Let me show you what I mean. So I just go grab one. Second. Box for me. Now, when they first brought them out, I bought some of the railroad ones. I bought 9 of them, but I've since bought a whole bunch more, actually 42 of these. So this is an FO. Now, there's a couple of things that are not good on it, but I'm a modeler. This is what modeling is about. Okay, this is something I want to emphasize to people. Now, I may come across as a bit of an elitist here. I'm not an elitist. It's a bit arrogant for me to say it, but I am something. I'm something of an elite modeler, but I'm not an elitist. So if you do whatever works for you, if that's fine. But I've got pretty high standards for myself. I don't expect everyone to live up to my standards. These are only my personal positions. So, so I got the Mark II FO. Sorry, the Mark II E, Hornby Mark II-E. Now, back when we're bringing out Mark II-Fs, and I need lots of Mark II-Fs. The problem is, there's no way I would be able to afford them, because as time was going on, they were getting more and more, you know, they were going to become more and more expensive. And I've gone and picked up the wrong coach, because that's the one I've already started to modify. So, there we go. Okay. So this is a TSO this time. Now, Hornby did a bit of a stuff up on it. I don't know why this happened. I think it's pretty bad, really, because they've got, you know, a pretty good reputation now, but they kind of fluffed up on this, which I think is a shame. So on the bottom, it's got a sol bar. It's got a line. You can see that the body doesn't fit down properly. It should be much more compacted down. So if I compare one that I've started to modify, there shouldn't be, if you imagine the chassis, the body shell should just wrap right around from it. It shouldn't have a Mark I style sol bar, so effectively it goes like that, goes down and then goes across. That shouldn't be on this model. But it's a little hard to show. Let me turn my light on, because you might be able to see it a bit better that way. Okay. So, oh yeah, much better. Can you see how there's a sol bar at the bottom here? Now that shouldn't be there. Shouldn't be there at all. And then the second part is the roof ventilators here. I'm going the wrong way. The roof ventilators are much too wide. So I'm going to do modeling. There's one of the people I know from the D&E forum. He created, in the wrong shape ways to buy, he created some roof ventilators, and they're on like a 3-sided box. So the idea is to, you know, file off the original ones and then put on the replacement ones. They're just twice the width they should be. And then the other thing to do is to drop the sol bar. So it's not a huge amount of modeling, but I'll be having to repaint them as well, because, you know, those were cheap. They were £17. I bought, you know, almost all, they were 17 and 19 pounds. I bought the first set of 19 pounds, although they had plastic wheels, which I've now replaced. And then the other, you know, the other load were have metal wheels on them. So, you know, but they still have the same critical problem, and that is that you got to drop the chassis. Drop the body further down on the chassis. You're only talking about 1.5 millimeters, and it's just a case of getting your knife, cutting off the clips, you know, that separate it, because the clips go above the sol bar. If you know, go above the body, the bottom of the body. So you have to just get your modeling scalpel and just, you know, wiggle and snap off the piece, and, you know, you're good. So you can drop the body, and then you know, and then replace the ventilators on the roof, and that's it. There's not a lot that you need to do to it. It's a bit of work, but you know, I would rather spend £17 on something than spend £50 on something, you know, and do a little bit of work. But I'm still going to have to do some extra little bits because, of course, as I mentioned before, when we compare a Mark II E and F, well, this air conditioning pack is different, and I'm going to make a 3D printed ones, and they'll be done in. I'll probably try and do them in 10s or 12s or something like that. So you can buy a whole train's worth. It'll cost you like 30 quid or something like that, and all you have to do is you just, you know, break these up, you know, remove this one, stick on my one, and largely it's done. And then one of the boxes on that box on the other side is missing, and there's a plate over this one. So in terms of modeling wise, it's not a lot of work that needs to be done. But I would rather do the modeling and save the money, you know. And I'm also going to do extra work because I'm going to put proper full lighting on and put some people in it, paint the interior, do it up. So, you know, it's not just going to be a rake of coaches behind an engine that everybody else has got. They'll all be individually numbered and so on. And what I'll do this on my channel. You'll be able to see how I do it so that if you want to, you can replicate what I do. So that's the pragmatic approach I've had to take, because I think I needed 33 Mark II Fs of various types. And in the end, I'm only ever going to need 4. And they'll all be DBSOs. I've already got them already. Going to need 4 DBSOs, 2 in Intercity, 2 in ScotRail livery. And to be honest, the ScotRail, you know, both of them are just so I can do other stuff, just because I want to. I think they were going to be closer to £60, but anyway, either way, it's still £1,600 it would have cost me if they're £50 each. I think they're going to be closer to 60, but I might be wrong. Was it 46? Can't remember now. It doesn't really matter. But let's say it's £50 each. You know, that would be £1,650. Okay, whereas I've paid you know, £1,750, let's say, if you include the ones that I paid, you know, times £1,750 times 33, £577. I mean, I've basically I've saved nearly £1,000. You know, that's the pragmatic approach I've had to take. So let's go back to the model list. So I would like to do Pullman Raker Mark IIs. Maybe someone will bring them out one day. I don't know. They're on the list, but whether I get them or not, I don't know. Then I got some Mark II Cs and some other bits. You know, a couple of stagecoach coaches when they used to use them on the West Coast Main Line in 1994, 5, I think it was. What happened was British Rail decided that they weren't going to have seating coaches on their sleeper trains. No, you know, no standard coaches on them where you could just, you know, not have a sleeping compartment. And Stagecoach wanted to get in the railway market. This is before privatisation, and this was their sort of opening move into it. And they actually there were so got them here somewhere. Mark II-D. First, there we go, and they had them in Stagecoach colours. They usually ran them in pairs. This was obviously just after being painted, but yeah, there you go. So these were used on night stock, and they were really bright at a time when railways were not terribly bright at the time. So just something a little bit different. And I already own those. Again, the Mark II-Ds and the 62XX series ones. Those are not former FOs with 7 windows. There's the DBSOs there for the intercity stuff, and just again, you know, something like this one. This is a cross-country one that can be swapped out. So, for example, this one, swap out that, replace it with the other coach. We've got a slightly different looking train. So, West Coast Main Line. Going to do 2 rakes of Mark III coaches with DVT. One of them will have an extra coach, an extra first-class coach for one of the early morning ones, but I can just swap out one of those to have it a standard coach. Then I've got my East Coast Main Line stuff. So, this one, this is, believe it or not, this is actually the same train. You think, wait a minute, that's a lot of coaches. No. What happened was, if I was to look in, let me just show you this. So in this book here, I think it's this book anyway, pretty sure. The coaches. Yeah. So at the end of these books, they had the HST formations page. And they have lists of the rakes of coaches. So there were different types of services. The general services were the normal trains, but they also had some Pullman sets. So the Pullman sets, so for example, we can see at the bottom, I don't know if you'll be able to read that, but we've got the Tyne Tees Pullman, which is HT10, which is the one I'm modeling. So we've got the Robin Hood Pullman, which is NL04. So that is the Derby, possibly Sheffield, but yeah, Sheffield. So that's the Sheffield down the Midland Main Line to London. The HT10, which is the Tyne Tees Pullman, so from Newcastle to London. And then the Master Cutler, which was, I think it was Leeds down to London. So these would be the first thing in the morning train that would get you down to London. And of course, HSTs had a massive impact on the railway, because not only did they modernize it, but suddenly places like Leeds and Doncaster and Huntingdon, they effectively were able to become commuter towns. So instead of taking 4 hours to get from, you know, Newcastle to London, you could do it in 3. So you could get, you know, you could get on a 6 o'clock train in the morning as a, you know, as a business executive. You could live in Newcastle or, you know, in Leeds or, you know, Doncaster or Huntingdon or whatever. You could live somewhere like that and just go to work, park your car, get on a first-class coach, have your breakfast, you know, a full breakfast, and then get off in London, ready to do your business executive work. You know, work in the you know, in the banking district, etc. So it allowed people, you know, it reduced the commuting time for people. So to cater for those services, in the morning you'd have a train that would run from the north to south, and then in the evening it would run back, and it would just sit at Bounds Green for the rest of the day. And it catered for a special market. One of the reasons why GNER and National Express and now Virgin have struggled is because, thanks to the recessions that we've had, when the banking sector went down the pan 10 years ago now, amazingly, bosses in companies were basically had to tell their executives, look, you know, I can't afford to pay for you to commute to London every day. You're going to have to go standard class now. And the revenue from those is the high stuff. That's the stuff where people, they don't pay £30 to get to London. They're paying 120, £150 to get to London and so on a day. So suddenly their revenue dropped, and this is why GNER and weren't able to pay their bills. Anyway, So for this time period, I'm modeling effectively a wider time period. So for the Pullman train, and if you notice the formation of it, you can see it's got 2 buffet cars and 1, 2, 3 first class coaches. So it's a lot of first class, and only 2 standard class coaches plus a TGS standard class as well. Whereas a couple of years later, from 92, this is by the time it happened towards the end of 91 actually, but once the Mark IV coaches came in, they start, they turned it into a standard train because the electric trains accelerated quicker and so on. So they were able to speed up services, and of course there was some equally Pullman Mark IV sets. So they replaced the HSTs, and so this was just reformatted, and they just changed some coaches around. So if you notice the numbers, so these parts are the same, there and there. 40756, the buffet car, is there, and then the first class coaches here, that's 75, and so all I have to do is swap out 2 coaches, swap out those 2 coaches, and it's because there's 41076. So all I have to do is take out those 2 coaches and put in those 2 coaches, and I've just changed the train. So all I did was, when I was buying new coaches, because I had some Lima ones and replaced them with new Hornby ones, I just, bought an extra 2 standard class coaches and was able to have 2 different trains. And just, if I'm doing post 1992, I'll have it without. If I'm doing pre 1992, I can have it as a Pullman train. So I've recently decided I'm going to have some extra ones. So I want another East Coast mainline train, Rake and Mark HST set. This one is going to be an extra. This one's going to be a buffer fitted one. So when the Class 91s were being introduced, they ran with Mark III trains with a Mark III with an HST power car with buffers in it. But Class 9 HST coaches don't have buffers on them. So in order to work with the Class 91, they had to convert a few TGSs with buffers on them. So I'm going to have that. I'm going to end up, I've got an extra TGS already, so I'm going to have the same coach, one with buffers and one without, so I can use it as either a buffer fitted with a 91 era one or without. One extra coach, not a big deal. I already own it. Going to do a Midland mainline train, but in intercity old livery, because they used to travel from York down to Doncaster, well, the avoiding Doncaster line, and then go down towards the Midland Main Line. Then I've already got this one, which is a northeast-southwest route, so PM41, and I want to do an extra one, and then I want to do a third one, but in blue and grey, because in the 1988-89 period, there was still a couple of trains around that were still in blue-grey that haven't been painted yet. So this will represent a previous time. So it'll still have intercity, Swallow or intercity old liveried power cars, but I can have it an early era. So, yeah. Then there's a sleeper train. So I've already got this. This is based on a sighting of a friend of mine. And it's just options to be able to spread things around a bit, just to make things interesting. So this is the train that I'm doing, but here's one with the Stagecoach livery Mark IIs. So this is the train that I'm doing, but I'm just tweaking it to be able to do a different train. And that's the only reason why it's on the list. It's not actually something I'm doing, it's something I've already got, and it's just a second option. Some spare coaches. I've already got 2 Mark IV sets in intercity livery, but I'm going to modify them heavily. There's a couple of problems with the Hornby coach. The first one is the skirting is attached to the coupling. It's a swinging arm thing. So I've designed a new skirting, the 3D printed design that you'll be able to plug on, and I'm also going to try to incorporate Hornby's Pendolino style couplings, so it'll be close coupling as well. And the other problem with, I'll show you what I mean, with Hornby's Mark IV. So Mark IV coaches were introduced in 1989. However, they had a bit of a glitch with them. The SIG bogies, they had really bad handling at first, and well, they did some work on, they figured out what was wrong with them, and what it came down to, it was a yaw problem. The yaw dampers weren't working properly, and the weird thing is, all they did to fix it was turn the bogies the other way around. So they rotated the bogies. So if we look, this is one when it was first introduced, and you can see how here's the corridor end, and it goes in an angle down and away from it. But if we look at what they're like today-ish, you can see how the bogies have been rotated around. Well, the problem is that if you do anything after 1989, which is pretty much everybody, you need to rotate the bogies for them to look right, but the skirting's attached to it, so you can literally snap it off and figure out some way to couple them up. So like I say, my goal is to replace the skirting, and it will include all the parts to do all that work, and then you just have the bogies on the other way around. I'll also make some parts so that you can modify other pieces, because some of the skirting panels are different in different coaches. And so yeah, there's and I'll also be designing etches for different components as well. This one's a whimsical one. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. The K-Glass charter train is one that I'm going to do. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's a hideous liveried charter train, but it kind of grows on you in a way. It was, green with a sort of an angled piece at one end and a flat thing on the other, and it makes like a K across the joint between the coaches. So it's quite bold. It was the Train Tours charter train. So it's a bit different, and can you imagine that on a layout? That looks so cool. So that's another one. And then parcel coaches. I got a lot of parcel coaches. I've got dozens, and when I say dozens, I mean 6 dozen. So, and a whole range of them. When I build my layout, a lot of people, they have a focal interest, and for me, my focal interest will be parcels trains. It's, I'm going to do a there was a location, although the infrastructure is there, they don't use it like that anymore. So it's based upon Chelmsford Low Level. And believe it or not, the photo that inspired me is in one of these books. And it's like, oh, that's pretty cool, actually. So, where is it? So I was inspired by one photo, this one here. It was a Class 3029 at Chelmsford Low Level. And it's just an interesting location. It's a small parcels terminal. It's not too big. It's not huge. It's the kind of thing that will be on the side of the layout, on the inside. And it's an interesting place. So this is the Google Earth footage imagery of it. So you've got the the Great Eastern line from London, London Liverpool Street to Norwich. So Chelmsford Station is just off to the left here, and it's a 2-track line, and then there's a loop here, and then coming off the end of the station, it comes down an incline, and then goes to a parcels terminal here. This is long enough for 6 coaches, so it's not big. and then there's a runaround loop. So my goal is to basically replicate this area here. Now, instead of it being an incline going down, it's just going to come around from a fiddly yard at the back, 180 degrees around, and then come on the inside here. And I'll have a shunter that can park up here. And the idea would be it would have electrification on these 3 lines, so I can use 86s or 90s generally. And then this line on the outside would be diesel only. So the idea is that a train would come down here, stop there, the locomotive would uncouple, it can run around it, couple up, shunt off back, and then push in backwards into one of these sidings. Or it can stop here, the shunter locomotive can come here, run it round, couple up, push back, and then push it into there, and then the loco, then the shunter can uncouple and go and park itself up here, and then the loco can run around and take the train out when it's ready to go. And of course, I like the idea of the 302.9, so I've already got the kit of one of those. And I'm also going to do some class 325 as well. So although it's not realistic for here, it's going to be a generic parcels terminal that's not too big. And it's something that nobody ever does. People, they have parcel trains, and a parcel train goes by and that's it. You go to railway shows. How often have you seen parcel trains as the focal component? It's always a freight terminal or, a station or whatever. So that's going to be the focal shunting, playing trains part, as opposed to stuff just going around. So that's that's my coaches. And then finally, I've got some special usage stuff, so some barrier vehicles, a generator van, and then I've got a rake of 5 blue-grey Mark IIIs, which were used for test trains work on the East Coast Main Line behind 91s and 89, various other things as well. And then the last bit is some departmental stuff. Again, whether I do all of these, I don't know, but I'd like to. So, like I say, these are all goals that I've got. And for me, this hobby is not a short-term thing. I've been playing this game for a long time. I've had these visions for a long time, and I've built a couple of layouts already. I've designed and built did a lot of work on an exhibition layout. I'm pretty good at wiring and things like that. So I'm intending to build a new layout using all those skills, because the railway I've got right now is not very good. It's basically some chipboard that's nailed to on some brackets on the wall, and effectively the design of it. I've got 4 tracks in the top corner, because I live in a block of flats, and so the room is 15 foot by 9 foot, and at the top there's like a lump that sticks out. It's one of the columns that goes down the building, and then there's another one. Oh, sorry, let me try that again. It's mirrored. It's really weird. Okay, let's try right there and there. Okay, that's roughly what it's like. So there's a column in the corner and a column sort of like 2/3 of the way in the room. So here's what the layout plan I've got in my head so far. I've still got to finish designing it and figuring out exactly what it's going to look like. But here is the basic idea. So, going to have a fiddle yard at the back. That's going to be about 10 sidings in a row with where the lumps are in the wall. It's going to have 4 tracks terminating to it. So fiddle yard goes to 2 tracks. So let's try again. So fiddle yard goes around to 2 tracks, comes down a hill. Try again. Goes up a hill, around the back, 180 degrees, and then it's going to go through a station that'll sort of wiggle its way through. So it won't be a straight one. It'll be a curved, station, and then it'll come around. Then it'll go over the top of the other one, down the hill, and then go around back into the fiddle yard. On the from the fiddle yard, on the inside, and the inside, it will go around and go into the parcels terminal on the inside part there, and then the last part is from the fiddle yard coming around. It will. I'm getting it the wrong way. I'm looking at a mirrored version of myself, so it doesn't come around right. Okay, coming around, it'll go anti-clockwise, and then it'll come down a hill at the back. So if you can imagine, you've got sorry, it's coming around, then it'll go into a helix here, which will take it below, and then I'm going to have possibly a. I'm still toying around the idea, a secondary fiddle yard, which will just be terminating stuff. It won't go through and around or anything. And then it'll go further down below again. So it'll helix with a bit coming off for one layer, and then it'll helix further down again and have a depot. And the depot will be largely based upon Bristol Bath Road, just because I love the style of the shed. And that will be the general design. Now, I have a vision of what it will look like. So the bit at the bottom here that I'm talking about, where it's going to go, it's going to have an up and a down line with the parcels terminal on the inside, and the other line going down below for the fiddle yard, you know, for the helix area. So what I have a vision of is Bensham, which is just to the east, sorry, just south of Newcastle. So this is so this is the line that goes underneath. So this is the East Coast Main Line going down towards London that way, and this is the line that goes around and goes underneath, and that goes off to Carlisle. So this is the Newcastle to Carlisle line. So, and I just love this, the style of this. I love the brick walls and the fencing, and you know, the stone here. You know, this is just so atmospheric. Can you imagine in City 125s and, you know, Class 91s, because they'll have overhead electrification going across here and here. And the idea for the layout is it'll go around the room twice. So effectively I'll have 15 foot by 9 foot, but it will go around the room twice. So I'll be able to have full length trains running on this, and they won't be tail chasing each other around. So it won't go from a fiddle yard around. So I won't end up with something that goes from fiddle yard, goes around, and then goes back into a fiddle yard. That, you know, is just going to be a bit boring. So the idea is that it'll start at the fiddle yard, it'll go around, it'll, you know, go over through a little station at the top, and it'll, you know, just a simple 6 coaches long. You know, it's going to be a branch line type, not a branch line, sorry, a stopping station on a main line. Go around and then back into the fiddle yard. So it goes around the room twice to get to the same location. So 2 tracks, around the room twice. And as I said, the atmosphere is based upon this. So now, in reality here, this started off at the same height and then went down a hill and then goes underneath this line later on. But the way I'm doing it is effectively one will be going that way and the other will be going that way. So it'll come from the fiddle yard, you know, it'll come from the fiddle yard at this end, go up the hill, around the station, around the station at the top there, at the back, at the other side here, and then back down the other side. So like that. And then on the inside, it'll go down. So I did it back around here the other day. Maybe not. So it'll, you know, it'll be quite dynamic. It'll be flowing up and around each other, and I think that will give it character. So again, to show you what the style is, this is the area. You can see it's dark and kind of dreary, but it's got a bit of color in it as well. And so I'll be able to have dark and dreary with brightly liveried trains. Because I mean, most of these photos are the blue-grey period, but I'm doing the intercity, network southeast kind of thing. So, you know, but look at that photo. That is such a wonderful photo. Imagine it with overhead wires on it. But, you know, check out this, you know, the signal that's mounted on the wall, you know, with the holes in the sides and things like that. That and the combination between brick and stone. So this is the kind of thing that I want to incorporate into, you know, my layout. That's what I'm going to have it look like. So if you can imagine, this is the line going up, and then on the inside there'll be a line going down, and then have a tall wall going up. And then it won't be a wall here, it'll be like some hedgerow area. And then on the inside here will be the parcels terminal. And this actually won't be terribly wide. It'll only be about maybe 2.5 feet, because this will all be low relief. I'm not sure what I'm going to have at the top here yet. That's still not quite planned. I want to give it about 1 inch away from the wall. And what I was thinking about is having some low relief houses, and, you know, sort of, I want it to look rather industrial and not in the countryside. So there's buildings. There was a construction that I thought was interesting the other day. I think I moved it in here. Where did I put it? Okay, if I didn't put it in that one, it must be in the buildings in the scenery section. Buildings. Yeah. Can you imagine something like this along, you know, so with you know, this is at the top of the hill, and, you know, down below is the wall. Just done. You know, something like that, perhaps, without, you know, just the windows and things. You know, this kind of thing in the background. So, you know, having that with a big wall below it. You know, a big building. In fact, this is very similar to what I've got in mind here. So if you can imagine, there's the wall coming down on a curve, with the, you know, the line going down to the helix below, and then the the angles coming down this way. Can you imagine this kind of look about it? So it'll be low relief, but it'll be high enough that I won't actually need a back scene. It will be all buildings and structures to, you know, disguise it, and maybe have some, you know, some back scene between the gaps between the buildings. So it's all about trying to make it look industrial, and in a town or on the outskirts. That was the picture I was looking for. So something like this, these kind of buildings, you know, make it look industrial and, you know, built up. So these are ideas that I've got. This could be put on a corner, you know. So all ideas I've got in my head at the moment. They're all structures, and, you know, trying to make it interesting. So, like I say, I think I'm going to end now because I've yammered on for ages. I was hoping some other people might join in, but I think I may have to give a bit more notice and try and get people a bit more interested. The goal I have is to have you to join in. You could join in the conversation. We can talk, and other people can listen and enjoy what we're talking about. Because me yammering at a computer, you know, that the live chat hasn't been terribly active. It's not like constant stuff to feedback to. I'm doing a lot of rambling and talking about me and what I want to do. You know, it makes me sound a bit narcissistic. I'm not that bad. But, you know, I would like to have conversations with people so we can, you know, not just me talking to a live stream, but the live stream coming in with me and having a conversation. If you look at what Google Hangouts are, you can have 10 people in a room all talking about what they like. And that is fun. You know, that's really enjoyable. So, oh, hello, Mr. Deltic. So, yeah, I'm going to finish now. I'm sorry if you've just arrived, Mr. Deltic, and you know, now you've realised. I didn't give a lot of notice. I mentioned it yesterday as something I might do, and then made an announcement a few hours ago to say, yep, this is going to happen. So maybe I'll do it on a different day. I don't know. So, yeah, if you're watching this, if you're not watching this live, and you watch it later, please leave comments below. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you think of some of the ideas I've got, some of the things that I want to do, and you know, talk about the coaching stock, whether these kinds of things are interesting. And not only that, do you think that making videos that can explain how the railway works, and you know, how to look at trains and say, okay, that kind of coach is that, and that kind of wagon's that, and so on, you know, those are you know, one of, as I said earlier on, I'm not an elitist, but I'm elitish modeler. I go by my own standards, but at the same time, I do want to encourage people to push their boundaries a little bit. You know, I've watched videos of, you know, I've watched other people running their trains or whatever, and I'll see someone that's got vacuum brake coaches, vacuum brake wagons, and then they'll, you know, or air brake wagons, and then they'll have a couple of vacuum brake ones. It's like, oh no, you can't do that, because they wouldn't, you know, they're not brakingly compatible. You know, you can't run them together like that, because the brakes will be jammed on one type or another. So one of the videos I want to make is to you know, to show people how the different braking systems work, and how sorry about that, that was my friend. I just told him to go away nicely. So yeah, like I say, I want to show people the prototype, and so that they can apply it to their layouts and to their stock. You know, for an example is, I've seen a well-known YouTuber who will run you know, 2 sets of wagons that look similar but have different braking systems, and they'll put them together, and it's like, you know. Now, this, a lot of the time, this is based upon on someone who doesn't necessarily understand, you know, doesn't know the difference. You know, it's not that they're idiots, and it's not that they're not, you know, interested, and they're not, you know, because so many people have a wonderful passion for this. They do, and that's to be encouraged. Absolutely to be encouraged. We want more people doing railway modeling, not less. And so I'm not here to burst people's bubbles and say, oh, what you're doing is rubbish. No, no, not at all. I'm trying to say, okay, we all, I'm convinced that we all want to do it the best way possible, the most realistic, the most prototypical way possible. And a number of the mistakes that I see made is mainly because people don't actually know these things. Well, how do they learn? How do they get to know these things? Someone's got to tell them. They've got to read it in a book, but they've got to, you know, understand where to find this information. Well, I've got a library full of books upon model railways. Like I say, I've been doing this since the 80s. So I have 25 years of experience under my belt. And as a result, I've learned things from other modelers. You know, you don't learn these things in isolation. These things are, it's something that starts off, you know, it's like a tree. It's planted, and gradually over time it, you know, it grows and it gets bigger and bigger until you've got a big massive oak tree or whatever. You know, the starting seed is, you know, might be just plain train sets, you know, and then someone starts building their first proper model out. But, you know, little mistakes get made because they have an idea of how railways work, but they don't actually have the knowledge of how they work. So, you know, as it grows, they get the knowledge and they think, oh yeah, I wish I'd have done that. And so, and this is where I see a lot of people who, they'll build something and then they'll realize that they didn't plan it out enough. They didn't think ahead. Because for me, the reason why it's taken me so long to actually get a proper design ready is because I plan things out to quite a degree. I mean, I'll give you an example of the kind of, you know, I will start off with a drawing to get an idea of what I want it to look like. And then, so I'll start off with a sketch. So here's an example. So this is a club layout that I helped build. So what happened was we already had the front part of the layout here, and we decided we're going to have a new fiddle yard. So which was better and more usable for the needs. So this is the fiddle yard, and the idea is green for the clockwise, red for the anti-clockwise, and blue for a bidirectional line. Because one of the things that I've seen is that, you know, with the old layout, because it was just a bunch of sidings that went across, the only way to get any trains from the green section to the red section was to do it right through the middle here, and then it ends up going, you know, the wrong way around the layout. So it's just wrong. It's just silly. That's not how the railway works. So the design I came up with was for it to go in here, go into the blue line, and then you could uncouple the loco, run it around, or even lift it up and put it on here, and then it can run that way. So that was the idea. And then there's a branch line that went around the back, you know, to a little station with a little yard thing. So that was a design, and that was built. You know, if I show you, that's the baseboard for it. I built the baseboards. I designed them and built them. But before, there's a middle bit. First, I did the drawing. Then I was on the floor on lining paper, on wallpaper, on the back of wallpaper. And I'll show you an example of, I think, is it in here? I'm trying to remember where I put it now. Oh, it's trek plans, I think it is, layout plans. Okay, so this actually gives you an idea of the shape of the room I've got. So this is my back bedroom, my second bedroom, 15 foot by 9 foot. So you can see this is the size length of it. This is the depot I was going to build. I've made a tweak now because the idea is to have the helix and have it come in this way as opposed to coming in that way. I made a change. So this will have to be flipped around. But you can see how I've got lining paper on the floor, and I've gone and drawn in 1-to-1 scale using Pico templates what the points would be. So you just draw around them and then position them where you want them. And when you're happy, then you can build the baseboards to fit the track plan rather than the other way around. Because what I've found is that, you know, modelers, they will design something and then, you know, so they'll have, you know, they'll build some baseboards and then they'll start putting track down. And unfortunately, what happens is they sort of realize, oh, I wanted to put a track there, but I can't because there's a strut going underneath it. I can't put that point that I wanted to there. So they end up having to move the point there, which means you've now lost 6 inches of your fiddle yard or your siding. Whereas when I design things, I draw it out in 1-to-1 scale and then build the baseboards to fit the track plan. So back to the fiddle yard boards. So let's take this one for example, or that one. So there's your basic board. So it's a 3 foot by 4 foot, and we'll ignore the top branch line bit here. So imagine this is just the end of it. Okay, so what you've got is a 2x4 frame around the outside with a strut that goes down the length every foot. So you're 1.5 and 1.25 points. And when it came to this, you can see how the points, the point motors are in the spaces, where there aren't going to be any struts going underneath. Now, when it came to this board was a problem because you can see how you've got a couple of points here. If we zoom in a little bit, we can see how there's a couple of points here. Now, if we look, we can see there's the outside frame there, and then there's one at a foot, and then the other one in the middle. But if that strut was at a foot, it would go right across those 2 point motors. If it was right in the center, you can see how it's not in the center. It would have been here, which would put it across there. Well, when it came down to it, it was much easier to just shuffle this timber, this strut, across a few inches, which enables the point to be put where it wants. If I hadn't have been able to, if I'd have put that there and suddenly, oh no, I can't put the point there because the strut's underneath, you end up having to move these 2 points over here. So now the ends here will not be there, they'll be here, which puts them there. So each one of those tracks has been shortened by a wagon, half a coach kind of length. Because remember, it's not just the immediate toe, it's about here when you can start putting something. So you've lost 6 inches for each single siding by putting it, by having it there. Whereas here, it's in the perfect location. So that's a simple example of planning. Because as I said, I've seen a lot of modelers who have built a layout and then they wanted to do something, they've had to make a compromise. And then they've made and then they've sort of run it for a bit and realized, yeah, but I wish it wasn't, I wish this wasn't a problem anymore. And they've had to scrape things up and change track plans and things like that. And it really just comes to, they had an idea of what they wanted to achieve, and they didn't really think it out. They didn't draw it out and then, play trains in their minds, and well, the way that I do it, for example, when I build my fiddle yard, I'll be building it for a full Mark IV set, Class 91, 9 Mark III coaches, 9 Mark IV coaches, and a DVT. So it'll be 13 vehicles long. 11 vehicles long. Sorry, rubbish math. So it'll be 11 vehicles long. Well, if you end up building a fiddle yard and then you realise, oh, I can only fit 8 on it, well, you've kind of stumbled yourself now. Whereas, I can draw it on the floor in pencil and then put my models on it and figure out whether it'll fit. Okay, that's a bit too short. Okay, how about if I slide that around a little bit further and things like, you can make modifications. You can have all your models on and you can figure out whether that station's long enough, or you can figure out whether that siding's long enough for what you want it to do. And if it's not, then you'll have to have, another think about it. So I think planning is the most important part when building a layout. The reason why I haven't got around to it yet is because, well, part of it is my background's full of crap right now. But I need to be able to empty stuff out in order to be able to, get in there on the floor with the pencil and be able to redraw it. And that's what I'm going to do on this channel. So, those are the kind of things that I've effectively had to pay my dues to the modeling gods, as it were. I've had to learn the lessons as I've grown as a modeler, and push my own boundaries to say, this is what I want to achieve. How can I achieve it? How can I achieve it in the most efficient way? So that's what my goal is, and that's what I want to show, and that's what I want to share as well. So I think I've talked far too much. Blimey. I said I was going to finish in 5 minutes or so. It's turned into nearly an hour. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope, like I say, I can do more, and hopefully more people will watch and get a benefit out of it. If you've enjoyed it, plus it up. If you didn't like it, plus it down. I don't mind. It's it gives me a barometer of whether you think this is worth doing or not. So thank you very much, and enjoy your day, and happy modeling.